I'm going to guess that you clicked on this video because of one or two reasons. Number one, you're a Pilates instructor constantly researching which training you're going on next. Or you saw the title and thought, what is the best training that instructors haven't heard of? Hi, it's Lauren from Lauren Chapel House Pilates. I've been a Pilates instructor for about 12 years, working across Europe and now in London. And I have done a lot of courses. And did you know, I actually have my bachelor's degree in education as well. And today I want to talk to you about one of the best ones. One that I genuinely don't think gets the attention that it deserves. And just to set the expectations, this is not sponsored. I'm not being paid anything. This is just me being, if I'm quite honest, a little bit evangelical about this particular education. And I really think more people should know about it. So the education I'm here to talk to you about is James Shaw Pilates. Now, if you're in the UK Pilates world, there is a good chance you have heard of him. James has a pretty strong media presence on Instagram, as well as appearing on many podcasts and being very well connected within the classical Pilates community, not just here in London and the UK, but internationally. And within certain circles, he is very, very well regarded. But he is independent, he's not a franchise, he's not a chain studio, and he's not plastering himself around everywhere, which I think is how he flies under the radar for a lot of people in the beginning. So today I wanted to do a proper honest review. I've done a few courses with James, not just one. So what you're getting here is based on a fair amount of first-hand experience. And I want to structure this video in a way that's useful, whether you've heard about him before or whether this is the first time you're hearing his name. We're going to cover So first, a bit of context on who James Shaw actually is, especially if this is new to you. So James Shaw is a classical Pilates instructor based in Margate in Kent, which is in the southeast of England. He built his name largely up in London by heading the Pilates concept at a very, very well-known fitness wellness brand here in London. And classical Pilates, just to clarify for anyone who wants that distinction, this is the original method, the contrology style developed by Joseph Pilates, which had the original movements, the original order, transitions, and purpose, as opposed to the contemporary style, which is a more research-based, updated version of that. There are values to both styles. Neither is better. They're just very different philosophies. But classical does have a very specific approach, and it does require a specific type of education. Now, the other thing that I want to flag, because this is relevant to how I'm framing this video, is that James Shaw is appeared on podcasts, he's in the media, and he is genuinely embedded in the international Pilates community. So while his education in and of itself isn't a huge name in the same way as, say, Stott or Polestar or Club Pilates is, James, as a teacher and a figure in the classical Pilates community, has credibility and a strong track record behind him. That being said, you don't need to take my word for it. By the end of this video, I think the content of what his education includes will do the speaking for you. Okay, so let's talk about price, because this is where the value gets really interesting. His fully comprehensive certification costs £5,000. Now, for context, that is pretty standard. That is pretty much the middle ground of what a fully comprehensive Pilates education would be costed here in the UK. Now, if you've watched my other videos, you'll know that they can range all the way from about £3,500 all the way up to almost £10,000. But 5K is pretty standard going. But here's the thing. What's included in this £5,000 is genuinely different to most educations that I've seen. So for one, you get 10 private sessions for your own practice included in that price. If you were to book a one-on-one Pilates session, you're often looking at £80 to £100 minimum. So that's about £1,000 worth of value already built into that price before you've even started. The second thing, and I think this one is genuinely rare, is James runs an open studio every week. 3 hours every week where students from across all of his educations are invited to join in to practice, either on their own or with other students, while James is there going around and giving real-time feedback, answering questions, building community. Not a Facebook group, not a voice note, in person in the studio. That is extraordinary access. And then on top of that, his students are invited to practice in the studio as well, so long as the studio is available. Because here's the thing about apparatus work, you cannot learn it without putting in the hours on the equipment. And especially with your classical Pilates, where it's a system where you are not spending the whole session on one piece of equipment, you may have your mat, you may even have a chair. but having the access to the full system in front of you is a practical consideration that most educations overlook. Quick pause. If you're finding this kind of video useful, do subscribe. I make videos specifically about the real, unfiltered side of the Pilates industry. The business side, the education side, the stuff that no one really talks about. So if that's you, come join us or join me on Instagram at Lauren Chapelhouse Pilates, and let's get back to it. The thing I know that some of you have been sitting with this whole video, the fact that this is an independent, non-accredited education. And look, if I'm completely honest, the word accreditation in the Pilates industry is something we need to be a little bit more nuanced about. Because unlike medicine, unlike physiotherapy, Pilates in the UK is not a regulated industry. You do not legally need a certification to teach Pilates. What you do need though, whether it's through a company or independently, is valid insurance. And insurance providers will assess your qualifications and what you've got, but they don't necessarily require a specific logo. So the question isn't really, is it accredited? The better question is, will it make me a good teacher? And will it get me the kind of work I want? And on both of those sides, in my experience, James Shaw's educations hold up. He does have the fully comprehensive education, but he also has multiple continued professional development courses and smaller workshops as well for existing Pilates instructors. The students I've seen come out of his education and the students I've met at the student workshops have a genuinely deep understanding of classical Pilates and technique, and the quality of teaching and the depth of the method and the why. It's not a shortcut. You are going deep into the work. And in terms of getting work, if you want to work in classical boutique studios, which are often independent, quite high-end, having trained with someone who is as respected within that world carries real weight, more sometimes than an accreditation or specific badge. Because don't forget, with your global educations, while there are master trainers, every trainer will deliver something slightly different. Whereas with James Shaw, it is him delivering the education. That being said, I always want to be balanced. If your goal is to work with a large corporate chain, a big gym group, or a corporate wellness employer, they may prefer a specific level 3 qualification. And in that case, the accredited route might serve you better. Not only because of the level 3, but also, whilst James Shaw's is very competent at teaching how to teach groups, it is not the method of classical Pilates to be teaching on 15 pieces of equipment at a time. And that will not be the focus of your teaching. As I said before, it really does depend on the kind of instructor you want to be and the kind of environment you want to work on. If you're not sure which kind of instructor you want to be, I have a whole other video about that. So feel free to take a look at that one. I'll leave the link in the description below. And the final thing I want to run down, and this one might sound a little bit soft, but stay with me, and that's community. Because I think when people are evaluating an education, they almost entirely focus on the cost, the hours, the logistics, and they completely overlook the culture of the education. Who are the other students? What kind of environment are you learning in? What does it feel like to be there? And what I can tell you from what I've seen from James Shaw education is that there is a really strong sense of community, and the people there are so passionate about deepening their understanding. A lot of his students are already certified instructors who specifically want to train with him or deepen their understanding of the practice or specifically sort out a classical education. They're serious about the method. They're not there because it was the first result on Google. They chose this education deliberately. And I think that matters. Because passion breeds passion, because the people you train alongside, the conversations you have in and outside of the studio, and the relationships you build during the education, those are the things that have a much longer term impact on the sort of instructor you become than I think we give them credit for. And if I'm completely honest, and this is maybe the biggest thing I could say, if I had the time to commit to James's full education right now, I would do it. And I hope to someday do it in the future. That is how highly I think of what he does. I've done enough courses with him to have a proper sense of the quality of the experience, the depth of his knowledge and his practice, and the community is the real thing for me. So when I went to the open student workshop, all of his students were so welcoming, so inviting. Everyone was practicing with everyone. I didn't feel left out. James was there. He was engaging with all of the students, mostly about Pilates, and there were a lot of interesting Pilates conversations going on, not just about the physical side, but also talked about Pilates and mental health and ADHD, different studio cultures, but then also just about day-to-day life. And it just makes me want to go back because I feel so welcome there. So let me just run down quickly who I think this education is for and who I think it isn't for. This is for you if you are specifically interested in the classical original Pilates method. If you're living in London, it is a bit of a trek, but it is doable by train. It's very, very close to the station. And when I was talking about the education with him, he did mention that you want to be putting about 15 hours in a week. This doesn't obviously all have to be at the studio, but in terms of your practice, that is the level of expectation and practice that they're looking for. If you want a boutique, high quality, mentorship-led, which is something I've talked about before, the value of the mentorship within education. And if you're drawn to training with someone who is genuinely so invested in the classical Pilates world, upholding the traditions and the standards of it, not just trying to get as many through students as possible if that compromises his ability to give the individual feedback. This probably isn't for you if you're specifically targeting working in big gyms. First off, you don't necessarily need that amount of education. It is a big investment, and big gyms, they're only looking for your reformer certification, mostly. And now, since the start of 2026, the level 3 has been categorized between group and one-on-one Pilates, which means a lot of the emphasis on the course is how to teach and cue in large groups. It's also probably not for you if you can't get to Margate. That being said, I am subscribed to the newsletter, and the newsletter did happen to say that there will be one running in London. So whether the mentorship would be there or in Margate, that I'm not sure. But the in-person days would be with James in London. And then if you wanted to do the mentorship, I'm not sure if he would be here or there, or if there would be another instructor. All in due time, I guess we will find that one out. This is a very immersive, mentorship-led style of education. So that's just something to consider if that's for you. So final verdict for James Shaw Pilates, £5,000, includes 10 private sessions, weekly open studio with real-time feedback, open access to practice, and the classical Pilates education is delivered by someone who is genuinely respected in that world and super invested in the standard of the students he produces. Is it for everyone? No, but for the right person, and I think by this point you'll know if that's you or not, I think it's exceptional value. And I definitely think more instructors should know that it exists. I actually think as well, for instructors who are already certified, there is an extra value into doing this after a few years of experience, because you can draw on your previous experience and what you know and then layer on top of it. I found for myself, even though I've been doing this so long, having had that experience allowed me to understand things from an even deeper level, how other instructors teach, why certain instructors say certain things, what is right and what is wrong. And it turns out there's not a lot that's wrong. There's just different in Pilates. If you're not sure if you want to do your comprehensive or your reformer education, then I've got another video on that right here. If you've done a Pilates education that you also thought was amazing, please let me know about it in the comments. I'm always keen to hear about it, or feel free to DM me on Instagram there, @LaurenChapelhouse Pilates. I hope this video was helpful, and I will see you next time.